Hey there everyone and welcome to some more dragon reviews, going through the support dragons. In this video we're going to look at the three support dragons, Motura, Harlequin and Glacius. Now as I've said with other support dragons, these are a little bit hit and miss, and this will be a little bit hit and miss. I won't hold back, I'll be critical where I should be, but you know, I do want to be positive too. So anyway, the first dragon, we're looking at the claws, the silver and the fish that they need for this. Motura, at this point we still kind of have normal kind of stuff, so it's 900 claws, 14 million silver, 45 million experience, nothing too challenging here. Then with Harlequin, this is actually a little different. They reduced the requirements on this because they basically made this the really cheap dragon for everyone to get up to Mythic quickly. Getting it up to Mythic doesn't really make any difference, that's the problem. It's actually kind of pointless to level up, because this dragon doesn't really do any damage, and well, we'll talk about it later. But anyway, the silver requirements are incredibly small. The reason why they did this is I think nobody was really getting it up to Mythic. So they were like, well, we're not going to make you spend loads of silver because it doesn't matter, let's just make it really cheap. So this is the cheapest dragon to get up. Experience requirement though is kind of the standard amount. And then lastly we have Glacius. So Glacius, this is where we get to the more expensive ones. This actually requires the most dragon claws out of anything, 6,000, and it goes up ridiculously. So it's 50 for the first one, 200, then 500, then 750, and then the last two, 1,500 and 3,000, are ridiculous. Now the reason is, when this dragon first released, it was actually for PvP. PvP was very new, and yeah, this dragon came out around that time, and they did a special Glacius PvP season where every single PvP match you did, you got a certain number of Glacius claws, depending on how well you did in the match. I think you got something like 10 for a win, and then like 5 for second place, and it went down like that, maybe like 3 and 2, I can't remember exactly. So that's why it goes up exponentially, so that people could get the superior, they could get epic reasonably easily, but then to get further and to get it up to Mythic, you had to do an exponential amount of PvP matches, because that's generally how these freemium game works. It's like, you know, you can play for free and you can get a little bit of the way, and if you spend a bit of money or you put in a bit of effort, then you can get a bit further. But to get all the way, you have to go extreme with the amount of effort you put in, and yeah, it's how freemium games make money. So that's why it takes a ridiculous amount of Dragon Claws to get, and for that reason it can be a little awkward depending on how we get Dragon Claws these days, because if you get like just 50 or 200, well, that doesn't really scratch the surface on Mythic quality. Anyway, other than that, the silver it does take more. It's more in the premium range, so about double what the standard dragons take, and then experience-wise, it takes 4.5 times the amount of experience, which is very expensive. So this dragon can be a little bit awkward to get in terms of the resources you need for it and the availability of the claws. But yeah, anyway, that's how it works. So let's take a look at the dragons in practice. First off, we have Motura. Now, unfortunately, again, this is one which I'm going to have to hold back from using, so I can talk about the skills first of all, because it's going to clear the map stupidly fast. This deals damage like mad. So, Motura, the first skill, 15 seconds cooldown, and it breathes fire. Now, this says breathes poisonous gas. It's because originally this dragon was actually fire, and they changed it to nature, but they changed the skill description, but they didn't actually change the, like, you know, it could have been green fire at least or something, or I think they did plan for it to become green gas, but then they didn't actually change it, so it's just fire. But anyway, breathes fire in a narrow cone in front of it for 5 seconds, which places the damage over time on enemies hit for every 0.5 seconds. However, it does have the stack limit of 5, so in the space of 2.5 seconds, or actually 2 seconds if you count, you know, as soon as it hits, then it's 2 seconds from that point that it will do the 5th stack. Anyway, it will do up to 5 stacks in that time. Any time beyond that they're in the fiery cone doesn't actually change anything. So it needs to have the cone on them for half the time. But anyway, it does 5 stacks of this damage over time. Each stack will do 1 times basic attack damage twice per second for 10 seconds. That is an insane number of hits. That is like what, 20 hits of 1 times basic attack. So each stack will do 20 times basic attack damage, and it can have 5 stacks. So this skill alone does 100 times basic damage. That's mad. If Motura was an attacker dragon, this would be incredibly good, but sadly, it's a support dragon, so it does half that amount compared to an attacker dragon, because the stats change. Anyway, the second skill, this creates a cone in front of it. It's got a 10-second cooldown, and the cone lasts for 5 seconds. Anything hit by it takes 2 times basic attack damage, twice per second. Sorry, that's not a damage of time. I should rephrase. While the cone's active, anything that's in it, twice per second, they'll take damage, two times basic attack damage. And also, the enemies will be rooted in that spot. Rooted means they can't move anywhere. They can still attack and stuff, but they just can't move. So melee enemies coming into that, they'll get stopped, and then they can't do anything from there. So this also does many hits, and ultimately doing the twice per second, 2 times basic attack damage is 10 hits of that over the 5 seconds, which means in total it does 20 times basic attack damage. That's crazy. Like, both of these skills are pretty crazy in the amount of damage they deal, and like, if you remember from a previous video when I looked at the damage leaderboard and Zulong was up there at the top as a support dragon that, you know, made a big scene on the damage leaderboard, it did that with pet damage. Motura does this without any pet damage. It just does a lot of damage with its skills. So let's have a look at how it works. It does do the attacking from range, and it's important to note, if you see here, this is out of the range. You got to make sure Motura does get within range. It's basically better for knights, this dragon, because then you can pull it within range, and also generally it benefits if enemies run to you. Like, this crystal isn't moving anywhere, but now you can see it's attacking properly. Oh my god, that went down quickly. That's really good. So now I'm just going to stay within range, and Motura will take quite a bit of damage at this point, but as it uses the skills, it's going to do an insane number of hits. You'll see that's just from the normal this frost cone thing, and then the fire, you'll see they stack up, start doing more, and it's taking a lot of hits per second. Now, it took a lot of testing to do this. I may not be 100% accurate with the number of hits and everything, but I think I've got it right, and you know, the damage is roughly around this kind of amount. So as you can see, it's clearing out the enemies nicely and doing a good job of damage. Now, all this dragon really does is damage, and you've got to note as well that it needs to be close range, so it's a little awkward to use. Like I said, for knights it's good, but for archers and wizards it may be a little awkward. It's also kind of going to die off. You know, it doesn't tank like a tank dragon, so do bear all that stuff in mind, and don't just look at it as like, oh my god, this does amazing damage. It's a little awkward to use, but the payoff is pretty damn good. So that's how it works. The animations, weirdly, they stay after it dies. I'm going to watch this until it dies. I'll actually stand out the way so all the enemies attack it. And this will like stay on the ground, weirdly, after it dies. Or if you like summon another dragon, conjure another dragon while the skill's going on, then this will just stay there. It's really annoying and very confusing and buggy, but that's how it is. It's very reliable. It happens like this every time. It's definitely a bug in the game. So Motura, great damage, and that's what it does. You just got to make sure that it's close range. It really annoyingly, it uses its skills even when it's out of range. It's a bit stupid, but you know, we can help it, and then it does good. The next dragon to look at is Harlequin. Now, dragons I've said are a bit hit or miss. This one, it's hard to really judge. It's incredibly unique when it comes to dragons. Now, most of them have a 2-hour cooldown, but Harlequin here, when you get it up to a high quality, and that is the only reason really to evolve it to high qualities, it gets to 5 minutes cooldown. It's incredibly fast, so frequent that you can use it, and this dragon works very, very differently to other dragons. So as soon as it makes an action, now this is important to note because it's slightly wrong in the skill descriptions. That third skill, which is a permanent, it's, you know, a passive, it's actually kind of a skill that activates as soon as it makes any action. So when you first conjure Harlequin, it can actually be hit and targeted, but as soon as it sees an enemy and starts doing an attack or the buff or anything, it will trigger this passive, which means that it effectively becomes a ghost where it can't be targeted or damaged by any enemies. So it will just be there, and it will kind of like, you know, just follow you around and be a helpful support thing. So what it does more than anything else is it has this healing aura around itself. Now, it's actually bigger than it shows. This circle here, it's more like a circle out here. And as long as you're within that range, then you're going to have the healing buff. So this first skill, once it triggers, then it's permanent. It usually uses it as the second skill for some annoying reason. But anyway, it happens, and it's a constant heal over time over this very large area for the whole party, and it's 4% per second. This is surprisingly good, and the fact that this dragon has a 5-minute cooldown means that you can use this very frequently. I also love this dragon because, as you can see, it drops common prism. This is very common. It's like it's 1/3 of the time that it drops something, and then about 90% of the time it's a common prism, which, you know, you can fuse for jewels, and then the other 10% of the time, well, there's the next kind of highest thing is a fusion rune for putting into skill runes, and then also can give an experience box, I believe, or I can't remember exactly. I think it is an experience box, but it's super rare. Anyway, that's how it works. So it's really nice having that every 5 minutes. If you're playing, make sure you keep conjuring this dragon. You can get those little bonuses, help you with your jewels and stuff. Anyway, so it's a heal over time, helps you with a map. Just it's a small little buff, and really useful. And when you die, the dragon dies too, so it can't just cheese a map. Now that said, I believe in a party, if you all have Harlequin out and one of you dies, that person's Harlequin dies, but the others don't, so they can finish the map. But you're going to be there for a very, very long time, because this dragon is useless. It's absolutely useless. The stats on it are terrible, which they've done on purpose, because it's meant to just be a little heal over time effect, basically. So the damage stats and everything are terrible. I mean, I'll talk about the second skill anyway. It's a 20-second cooldown. It creates that little box trap that explodes when something gets near it, and then it places a damage over time on all nearby enemies, 3 times basic attack damage, hitting 4 times. So that's 12 times basic attack damage, which sounds amazing, except the damage stat on this dragon is terrible, so it doesn't really do any damage. It's heal over time, constant heal over time. There's really cool aspects about it. Harlequin is very, very nice. I love it as a design. I think it's really good that we have it. But it's also not one which is going to be doing maps for you. It's just there to help out. The final dragon for this video is Glacius, and this is where we go back to the realm of bad support dragons. Glacius, it has 2 kind of damage skills that do slow. And I mean, slow sounds nice on a support dragon, right? No, it's bad. So Glacius, 15-second cooldown on the first skill. Adds an area of effect around it, as you could see there, doing damage over time to all damage over time around the dragon for 10 seconds, dealing 0.5 times basic attack damage twice per second. So in total, that's it's doing 1 basic attack damage per second, 10 seconds. Does about 10. I mean, sounds nice. It also slows enemies around it. The problem is it attacks from range, so that's not really going to hit that much. It's like the Crystallis problem. I mean, this dragon is actually very much like Crystallis, except with half the damage stat. So, it just doesn't really get the job done. So, yeah, not much damage from that. Not as much as you'd like it to be. And then it does the slow effect, which is a fairly decent slow. And then the second skill is also 15-second cooldown, and it cools down cooldown and cools down. It cools down these 4 ice crystals randomly around a target, and then, sometimes they'll hit enemies, sometimes they won't. It actually cools down 5, sorry, not 4. And then they explode, and they deal some damage. It's 4 times basic attack damage each. And then they do a ridiculously big slow. It's practically 100%. It slows them down to a crawl, it says, and it definitely is. I'll see if I can show what it does with that. But yeah, basically, this dragon is it would be a good attacker dragon, but it doesn't have the stats for an attacker dragon, so it just doesn't do good enough damage. Oh yeah, see, it's 4 crystals there. There's just 5 the other time. Anyway, so let's move away. Let's see. Oh, these enemies don't get slowed properly. That might be the case on Shadow Fury as well. I'll have to go back and check that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So these enemies don't actually get slowed, but normally what this does is it will slow enemies to it's like a 95% slow or something ridiculous like that. If this was an attacker dragon, it would do good damage. It would probably be very good in PvP, slowing enemies, slowing other players till they just can't move. I mean, it would probably just make them fly out the map and be very annoying in that regard. But as it stands, it doesn't have the health to tank, so you can't really make it go close range for the damage there, and it doesn't have the damage stat to do proper damage. It's got the support dragon problem, and it doesn't do anything special. So that's this dragon. Hope you enjoyed this video. Actually, before I close off this video, I forgot that we covered Motura. So when it comes to damage dragons and the damage output of dragons, Motura stands up really, really nicely against them. I mean, we saw that the damage output was good, and sure enough, when you compare it to the other dragons, it does amazingly well. It is not pet damage, so it's not kind of getting high on the leaderboard for that reason or anything like that. This is very much, it deserves its place on the leaderboard. It is in 6th place, behind my favourites of the Avalanche, Fracture, Darkheart, and it's actually above Chrysalis. It's more like 13 times attack damage, while Chrysalis is the 12.3. So, also, it's a small over effect. That is lovely. It is the example I used for small over effect. However, I would say, in some cases, it's not like it's hitting some enemies but not others. It's definitely hitting an area of effect. So a lot of the time it will hit all the enemies very nicely. So the fact that it's not large over effect doesn't matter in some cases, is what I mean. So yeah, Motura does amazing damage, and the fact that it has double the health of some of these other dragons, like Chrysalis, for example, means I would say it's a lot better than Chrysalis. Motura is a brilliant dragon. The only thing about it is it's awkward to use, because it has to get into close-ish range to really use the skills properly. I would say Fracture and Darkheart are better because they also have healing and other useful effects and stuff. But, you know, Motura is definitely up there as one of the best damage dragons that also doesn't just die like a fly. So, yeah. Anyway, Motura makes it onto the list. Unfortunately, the other two, Harlequin, you know, that's a niche case. It's a nice little support dragon that you can use very frequently. And Glacius, that's not going to appear anywhere. That's just shit. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I will see you in the last support dragon video coming up very soon.